Hello, everybody. Good evening from wherever you are. It's quite funny looking through the names of just through is here. Obviously, some people I know, like Joan and Ben, we've known each other for years. But then across, there's one of the lambs, who must be one of the Sibford Ferris lambs, which is really quite interesting. And Barbara, who was my dad's second cousin, is here as well. And we met for the first time only last month. I went and visited her and we talked about the family. So it's quite exciting to be here. So just some things before I do start screen sharing. I put together some slides just to illustrate my talk. There's quite a few of them. So I think when we discuss this, I'm going to try and get through things in, say, 40 minutes or so. That's what I was sort of told, but we'll just see and then have some questions at the end. I can sometimes struggle with sitting still and just watching a face speaking. So hopefully lots of slides will make things a bit more interesting. It's not like I'm talking about discoveries, and the way I've done it is I've put this into a bit of an order as to how I discovered things. So you come along with me over something that I did a few years ago. And in this very much were Ben and Margaret. Sorry, I'm saying Joan because I'm reading the thing. Margaret, not Joan. I know exactly what your name is. Sorry. And because we were like together trying to find out some stuff, and I'd be excitingly sending these emails late in the middle of the night. And so some of the things I put here follow that process. So I'm going to start screen sharing now. Okay, let's hope this works. So we're going to start talking about the King family of Yorkshire. And what I'm going to start with really is lots of this is from my dad, because my dad started researching his family in 1958. So it's a lot, he's dead now, but it's a long time ago when he started researching. And one of the things that I found a bit boring really at the time is he would always go on about this family and all the research he'd done. It never really interested me very much. And he drew loads of family trees like this one. This is one of his old examples. I don't know when he did this, quite a long time ago, judging from it. And at the top, you've got the Binns family. This is all the generations of the Binns. We're not talking about the Binns really today because lots has been done on them. And it was the Kings that I was really, really interested in. And if you look at the very top of my dad's tree, though, you will see at the top, John Binns and Abigail King. And I always felt that Abigail King and her family had never really done much research on it. So when I started digging into my dad's side, this is the side I started with. Since then, I've found out there's so much more about the Binns. I thought it'd all been done, but there's a lot more. And even only recently, me and Emma and Ben and Margaret and others were talking about some new discoveries. So it's really interesting. But we're talking about Abigail King. And what we know here is that she had, with her husband John, several children all the way through from 1704 to 1721, just over here. And we can see all the names of the children along here as well, and finding out sort of more about them. But we know that Abigail here as a widow, because we're talking about her, not the Binns. This is her burial here. So we've got Abigail Binns, widow of John Binns, late of Carlton Biggin, deceased because she was a widow, died the 31st of the third month, because obviously, of course, Quakers didn't use the months as we would use them, of the third month, 1753, age 70. And was buried in the Friends burial ground at Skipton on the third day of the fourth month. So this, I'm showing this because this date of 1753 is important when she died for reasons that will become clear slightly later on. And we also know that she was 70 from this. And we also know from records that were kept a long time ago that she was born in 1782 in Meyer House near Marton. We know that. We don't have a birth record for her for reasons that we will discover later, but we know that that is where she was from, and obviously evidently where her family were from. So what do we know about the Kings? Pretty much nothing. We know that she was the son of William King and that he was married to the daughter of Benjamin Parker. So in the records, as so often the case with women in history, we don't know much about them. And even her mother's name wasn't recorded, just that she was the wife of the daughter of Benjamin Parker. We do, however, know, because we discovered that her mother's name was Mary, and we found that out only a few years ago from looking at finding that the marriage in the minutes of the registers, because as we'll come to discover, lots of the records for where we are do not survive. Now, I don't know if you use Find a Grave, the website here. I love Find a Grave because you can often find some people on there that people have uploaded pictures of their gravestones and things like that. Abigail's listed here, but it's quite important to remember that Quakers didn't have burial markers until 1850. So there was nothing before then. So even though she's here, it isn't really about her grave, but it's an important part of the story, really, because I was in Sunderland very, very recently, wondering if like some ancestors' graves were there who died in 1836 in Nile Street, the burial ground there. And of course, we know that there can't have even been any memorials because there weren't really Quaker memorials until 1850, but it's quite an interesting thing. So this is really, you don't need to read all this, but this is what started my King journey. And it's an email to Ben, right? To Ben Beck, who's here. And you don't need to read all this, but I just started going through, and as we should in family history, we should always check whatever we read from someone else's work, even if we trust them, even if we do everything, we should always look at it ourselves because there's often errors there. So this is a long time ago. This is November 2014. I emailed Ben and saying, "Oh, your website is wonderfully informative. It's brilliant. I mean, probably lots of you, if you've got connected ancestors, will have seen it." And I just started like writing to him and just saying together, I've been putting stuff together because my father was going to be 80 in the next month. And this is nearly a decade ago. And I was looking through some things and I was just, this isn't to do. So I was just saying, oh, I'm wondering about this. And we started a long communication. We'd already been in touch before, but we started a long communication. And here I'm still going on, you know, it's a late night email. You can see 23:16. There was me not wanting to be in bed because I just was addicted to family history, as we often are. And I'm just talking about this, and I'm talking about the Binns family of Clough Hay, and we're still going on. So again, we don't need to read this email. It just is a sample of what was going on behind the scenes as I'm trying to work out about these ancestors. And then this is the thing that was quite interesting, and this is where we go into me really trying to understand who was Abigail King. So I'm going to read this email. I said to Ben, I said, I've come across some more notes my dad made which are of interest and need to be checked out. These are as follow. 29th of the 11th month, 1706-7. Obviously this date is like this because of the way the calendar was at the time, but let's not go into that now because that's a whole different story and I'll bore everybody. But this day, Henry King, son of William King, belonging to Thornton Meeting, did publish his intent of marriage. John and Abigail named a son Henry, and as this Henry King married in their house, as we'll see later, he's probably a relative. If the William King is father, then Henry is presumably her brother. So pretty quickly, we've got this William King here, father of Abigail, who's the person I'm trying to find out with the Kings. Very quickly, we can see, right, okay, almost certainly there's a brother called Henry. So we're already piecing things together from the records we've got. But there is a little bit of a problem because there's a transcription of Yorkshire Notes and Queries by Joseph Horsfall Turner from 1890, which has this detail in the full marriage saying Henry King, son of Henry King of Oakcliff in the parish of Carlton, belonging to Thornton, within Settle Monthly Meeting, and Luce Smith, daughter of John and Mary Smith, blah, 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 but at the house of John Binns at Farnhill, Cragtock in the parish of Kildwick. Now, this is a problem because we can see here from this transcription, this is saying it's Henry, son of Henry, and the other record is talking about, which is from the minutes, is from Henry, son of William. So we've got these two slightly contrasting things, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? Oh, why can't records be easy? Because they never are they? So we have to look at everything, really. But I'm pretty sure this is an error. I've not gone back and checked the original to see if he maybe made a mistake. It's something I still need to do, but there's never time. Later things all indicate that Henry was son of William, but it just really goes to show you need to check everything and make sure that you've got all the evidence you need to make an accurate decision or of what you think the case is. Okay. So then here's me emailing to Ben again. I'm going, oh, I've been Googling those kings and they're mentioned in this online transcription. I'm not really sure what this is all about yet, but I'll read more about it tomorrow. Search for Henry King and you'll find it. And if we go to this book, we'll see that this is a publication from a long time ago by these two reverends who were looking at all nonconformist records and transcribing some things. This is online. It was transcribed by Colin and Pauline Hinson in 1995. So I said, oh, well, let's look at this. And this is about the Toleration Act, which comes into here. And the Toleration Act was, I'm just going to read this. This is from Google, but it's quite a nice, simple explanation. In 1689, after much debate, Parliament passed the Toleration Act to unite their Majesties' Protestant subjects in interest and affection. It allowed most dissenters, although not all, the freedom to worship publicly, provided they took a simplified version of the Oath of Allegiance. So this basically then meant that it was almost like registering, really, certain nonconformist congregations like the Quakers to say that they could meet and where they were going to meet. And so there's a couple of things that tell us more about the kings from this. And we can see this is from October 1689. This is listing where nonconformists were going to meet. And there is a place at Settle. There's a beautiful meeting house at Settle, which is just fantastic. If you've never been there, it's so beautiful, which was built on purpose. This was for the Quakers. And then down the bottom here, we've got one each at the houses of Richard Boothman of Salterforth, Thomas Wood of Marton Parish, Margaret King of Marton, William King of Stainton. And this, obviously, I put these in bold because this really sticks out because my house was in the parish of Marton. So we've got a Margaret King here. Who is Margaret King? She's a woman on her own. We can see all the other places are men. So why did she have her house in her name listed here? So that is quite interesting. But we can see William King here. That's our Abigail's father. So we're just piecing bits together from this. And we already know then that William King, a relative called Margaret King, were Quakers, assumed relative, let's say, but pretty sure because we know we're connected to Marton. In 1689, they were Quakers. And we know that Abigail's baptism does not appear in the parish registers. So they were Quakers by 1682 when she was born. So we're just trying to work backwards a bit more from this. We've got a later one as well. This is 1698. It looks like we're going back a bit too early, but this is 1698. Again, these were the houses registered in 1698 under the Toleration Act. Henry King in Marton, William King, Oakcliffe in Carlton, John King in West Marton, and then there's also William Slater in Kildwick. So, okay, Margaret's gone. Her house isn't registered anymore in 1698, but we've got a Henry King here, a William King and a John King. They must be related, we assume. What's going on here? So I'm Googling around and I'm still emailing Ben. You know, we're in December now. I don't know what time did I send this email? Oh, it's quite reasonable time, 4 o'clock. So that's not so bad. And I'm saying, oh, I found a burial of Henry King here from the same place Abigail was from, my house near Marton in 1680. I'm assuming she's either Abigail's uncle or grandfather. And then there are a lot of King baptisms, children of Henry, Thomas, and so on. And there's a long list of names of witnesses to a marriage, which lists John Binns, Abigail Binns, and the King family. I always say to anyone researching family history, always look at the witnesses. Obviously, in these registers, we don't have the signed version of them. We've just got a transcription. But in signed registers, anything, the witnesses can be really, really helpful. So never underlook them, look at them, overlook them. So this is from Ancestry. The Quaker registers are on Ancestry, which we know. And this is the page from these, that's listing the death that I'm talking about. I've always got the burial, rather. And page in quite old writing. I'm going to talk a bit more about these registers in a minute because they were a bit confusing to me at the first. But in this register, we can see Henry King of Meyer House near Marton was buried the 27th day of the 7th month, 1680. I don't know how easy it is for you to read this old writing. I can just read it so easily now, but I know it may look a little bit strange sometimes with different letters. So here we go. Right, we've got a king here, 1680, Meyer House in the Quaker registers. We know there's Henrys in the family. This person must be related. But how? We had to try and work out. Now, Meyer House, I've never been here, but Googling it, Meyer House farmhouse in Martins Both is here as a listed farmhouse building, which is there. There's a picture of it. I'm assuming this is the site. I don't know if there was different farmhouse buildings in Meyer House. I really don't know. This is, again, an area that I really want to go back and search for again to see if I can get a bit more clues on this, but there's never enough time, is there? But the description of this on the listed buildings shows that it was listed in 1954, talking about in Martins Both, because there were two different Martins in Craven. And the description of it for Meyer House talks about it's a farmhouse in later 17th century, pebble dash and slate stone roof, 2 stories. There's a whole, and it says that there are some more things from the 19th century. But if it dates from the later 17th century, could parts of this building be the ones that the kings were in? It's fascinating to think about. Who knows? Hopefully I'll find out some more about that soon. Now, on that page I showed you, this is the top and the bottom clips of that page, because reading everything is a bit interesting. So this is the top of the page where the Henry 1680 burial is, and it says a record of the burials of friends belonging to Broughton Meeting, being people, I can't quite read what that says. Is it pertaining? I'm not sure what that says. To the parish of Thornton, in the county of York. So that's the top bit. And at the bottom of this page, though, is what looks like a later hand. And it says here, the records of burials from this were transcribed by John Tatham in 1820 from a register kept by Lawrence King in a different meeting. So something a bit strange is going on with these records, as we'll find out later, for Settle in Yorkshire. But one thing as well that's important is if you see an entry in a burial register, be it parish, be it Quaker, sometimes at the very beginning of the register book, there's other things that might be interesting about the group or congregation. So it can always be good to skip back to the beginning to have a look. Now, I was skipped back to the beginning of this book myself, and you can see here that this page here says the old, spelt with a U, the old register book. And then a later transcription here talks about what's in this book, and it's talking about the monthly meeting of Settle and 3 books containing marriages, births and burials marked within and listing all the dates. So these are all things when they were sent back, I think, when all the registers were requested by law and lots of people sent their registers back. I think this was made then, from what I can understand. But you can see here that it's got births and burials from 1652 to 1777. This is not correct, as we will come to find out when I'm looking at these registers to try and understand them. This is the front of the book. You can see Settle Register Book, the Society of Friends, so very old here. And these are the entries in here from that big page. We've got Henry King's burial at the top there from 1680, but these are other king burials too. And we can see there's Mary, the wife of Thomas King of East Marton. She was buried in 1694, so another king. We've got a Thomas here now, presumably connected. Then underneath we've got Margaret King, departed and buried in 1700. Right, so this is clearly the Margaret whose house was registered in the Toleration Act. She wasn't she's died in 1700. so we can find out what happened to her. And then we've got here 2 daughters. We've got Thomas King again here, saying they're his daughters. We've got Margaret and we've got Anne, both young daughters of Thomas King in 1708 and 1716. So 4 king burials in this rather random page, and it'll become a bit clearer later what was going on here. My theory already from looking at these is that Henry and Margaret were married. My theory was that Henry King, he died in 1680, which we know, left his wife Margaret. That's why in 1689 her house was registered, because she was a widow, and then she died in 1700. It's all coming together a little bit with piecing these records together. And then again, my email to Ben, he's a bit of a co-star in this, really, without even saying anything. But I said, I've spent a bit of time highlighting all the king references in those pages in the registers, and I've drawn up some family tree tables of the kings, which I will scan and send to you on Monday. Look at the time here. Look, gone 1 o'clock in the morning. It's terrible, isn't it, really? But anyway, which I will scan and send you on Monday and have a look at. However, I will give you some brief details on what I come across. In Settler, 4 kings who all had children born in the 1690s to the 1710s, which I found in them. They are Thomas King, Henry King, John King, and Lawrence King. So alongside my William, who I knew exists because of Abigail, I've got 4 others here. And already in my head, I'm thinking, right, these feel like these are presumably siblings or cousins. We're getting somewhere with this King family. So it was quite exciting, really. So these are my records that you don't need to pay much attention to what's here. It's just basically showing what I was doing at that time, how I was trying to work everything out as I was looking at them. I'm making a note of where I found these records just so I can refer back to it later. That's so important, just so you know where you found things. So do always do that. And then I started making various tables. And these were the children of Thomas King that I found from the records. And I then knew that he married Mary, who died in 1694, but then he married again to an Elizabeth Jackson. And if you look here, according to Margaret Page, there was a daughter, Elizabeth. So we're all talking at the time about these, and I'm making notes on everything. And there were some more pages, and I was looking at the children of Lawrence King from all these records and seeing that Lawrence married Grace Beanland in 1707 and piecing together all the children, trying to work it out. And then I get onto Henry and Luce Smith, who we know married in 1707. And what I then started doing is once I'd done all these trees, I then started numbering them all and cross-referencing everyone. So it just helped me do things better. So I numbered Henry King as 6A. His father, as we'll find out later, but he's actually William, because I've got the 2 names, because we're not sure who is who at the moment. Henry King is 6B. And I numbered them all so I could easily cross-reference everything. This took hours. I mean, it was a real task, this one. And then I'm emailing Ben Beck, looking again, it's still 1 o'clock in the morning, saying, having gone through all the burials, I found that Lawrence died in 1724, Thomas in 1734-5, Henry in 1737 as an aged man, and John in 1738. So I'm finding all these men in the registers. And the interesting one, the one that just leapt out at me, is this one. John's burial is interesting. So this is John's burial from 1738. As it states, he was the last, but not the youngest, of 6 brothers and 4 sisters. So he was therefore the last surviving child of 10 siblings. It means John cannot have been Abigail's brother, as she would still then have been alive. And if we remember at the beginning, I showed you a burial of Abigail King from 1753. She was living at that time. John is dying in 1738, so 15 years before she died. And it says he was the last, but not the youngest, of 6 brothers and 4 sisters. He is not Abigail's brother. He cannot be, because she is still alive. So we're piecing all this together. So let's have a look at this entry for John King for the burial of his from 1738 here. These are all on ancestry. I've just when I've screenshotted things, I've just left in the piece so that anyone seeing this or wanting to look at it afterwards can find where these are. And again, if you look at Quaker records, you can see that often there's two copies of the burials, because there was the meeting house entry and they were copied elsewhere and went on elsewhere. This one here, John King, the last of 6 brothers and 4 sisters, right, saying when he died on the 28th and then when he was buried on the 30th of the 5th month, 1738. If we look at this register of burials, it just gives us this information, the last of 6 brothers and 4 sisters. Now, if we look at the other version of this burial, also from 1738, it gives us more information. John King, an aged man, died, with a Y then, died the 28th and was buried, I never know how to pronounce it. Is it Lothersdale? Someone can correct me. I never quite know. It is. I can see Margaret's nodding. Thank you so much. The 30th of the 5th month, 1738, being the last, but not the youngest, of 6 brothers and 4 sisters. So the reason why this is important is these 2 separate burial registers in the Quaker records. If you've just seen this one, you're not going to have all the information you might be able to get from the records, because this gives us more information. It tells us, firstly, he's an aged man, which is additional information. And it also tells us that being the last, but not the youngest. So we know that he wasn't the eldest child here. So a tiny bit more information that might help us down the line. And here we have again that burial from the beginning that started us off. Abigail Binns, widow of John Binns, who died in 1753. We know she is not John's sister because she is living. So the theory is she must be John's niece. Now, this is a page from the Settle registers. It is a little bit damaged around the edge. Again, I've left everything in here so people watching can find out where this is. This has got, these are all the births for Settle monthly meeting. And this is really, really unclear because it's slow blurry, but it's saying this is the births from the year 1694 to the year 1708. Okay, and there's this odd thing written in this, which is a bit blurry, because it says here, an account thereof, some by record and some by memory. Okay, so this is basically saying that the entries underneath were not done at the time, they were done some by record and some by memory. So clearly this is a retrospective list for the registers, for reasons that will become clear later. And again, this is a page from that further down. We don't need to read all of this because there's loads of text. It's not important to do that, but we can just keep seeing all the kings here. Look, there's the king name. There's the king name. There's the king name here as well. We can see some of the dates here. We've got 1697, 1698, 1700. But we know that this was not recorded as it went on. It was recorded at a time later. And then this is an email to Margaret, and this is through the rather great Quaker British Isles Roots chat thing that used to exist. I don't even know if that still exists. I don't use it anymore. I think it went down, didn't it? I think it was migrated somewhere. But anyway, and I'm replying to Margaret here and saying, thanks for your message. I'm looking at the records. And then what I've discovered is the registers prior to 1725 were lost. So Lawrence King, using surviving information and memory, put together a set of reconstituted records. So if I hadn't gone digging around and really questioning what was there, I might not have realized this was the case, because it means that in this area, not everything's going to be there. Some things are going to be missing. Some things are lost forever. So if we're looking for someone here, it might be they were there, but the record just wasn't put in when they did it from memory. So again, this is still, look at that, another late night, look, gone 11 o'clock anyway. And then there's a separate register for settle, and this is the front of it again. So still haven't done enough on understanding all these records, and I will try and do it again in the future at some point, I hope so. And this is again talking about the Society of Friends from the monthly meeting of settle. And we've got marriages, births and burials from 1708 to 1765. But I've already said to Margaret that, hang on, but I know the records were lost before 1725, and this is how I know. So I'm going to read this to you because this is the top page at the beginning, and it says, the records of the marriages, births and burials of friends within Salterforth Meeting, the account whereof being continued and taken by Lawrence King, one of the King families, son of John King, since the year 1725. So this is a generation down there. This is Lawrence. So my theory is we've got Henry King at the top, we've got his son John King, and we've got another generation of kings here. The kings, in terms of the Quaker line, are vast, as we'll find out. And this we look here. And there had been an account kept of friends that was I think that was, is it that was buried? And sorry, and there had been an account kept of the friends that were buried at Salterforth before the year 1716, which was lost by an accident, so that no more but only their names could be remembered afterwards. Yet it was thought convenient that they should be taken notice of so far as they could be collected, which are as follows. So again, we're seeing here they're reconstituting the records at a later date because the original burials were lost. The burial records were lost. And this is the list of names here. I'm not going to read all of them because they don't all refer to us. But the first was Robert, blah, blah, blah. And if I'm just going to scan across to the kings that we need, we've got loads of names here, just scanning across. Here we've got Margaret King. Now, we already know that her burial does survive in the other version of the records. So she's here, but Henry isn't, which is a bit strange. But obviously, this is how it worked. We've got also a son of Lawrence King here. We've also got the name of the Parkers. We've got Benjamin Parker and his wife here. So Benjamin, we know, was the grandfather of Abigail King. We know that Benjamin and his wife, her name's not even recorded here, which is a bit sad. But we know that then he died before 1716. And this is important because if you look in the transcription on Ancestry, these people have not been indexed, so you won't find them. The only way you're going to find them if you look through the registers. So this is why I always say go back to the beginning, have a look through to see if there's anything else in there, because there could be other stuff that's interesting for you. Then we've got here William King. Well, look, here we go. William King, listed in these burials before 1716. This is surely Abigail King's father. Wouldn't have found him without looking at this register. There's a Benjamin King here. Okay, so I'm theorizing, right? Don't know who he is, but we know that there was Benjamin Parker. Could Benjamin King be one of William's sons? We'll never properly know, but it sounds pretty likely to me. Two daughters of Thomas King and other people here listed. So this gives us a bit more information, and it places the death of our William King, father of Abigail, before 1716. And then this is the next bit on the page, and it says, and since the year 1716 to the year 1723, there are some burials records with the day and month, but not the year. So we've got a bit more detail, but now we might know the date of the month, but we don't know which year they are. So which may seem to have been a neglect of the writer or transcriber. So we often think here that the Quakers were amazing record keepers, which they certainly were, but something slightly odd was going on here in Settle, because one register got lost by an accident and some things were retained. So it's quite interesting. Obviously, somebody wasn't great at what they were doing here. And there's some more names here, but there's no kings. So again, I'm just go back and look through other parts of the records because it might help you with your own research. And then I'm saying again, in this is to Margaret here, and that's just my little email in the Quaker British Isles on Roots Chat. I'm saying, using these and the records kept after 25, I've been able to put together a tree of the King family. This is my current interpretation of the records we have surviving. So we know, because we saw at the beginning, Henry King of Meyer House near Marton was buried on 27th of September 1680. You must always remember as well, I'm not going to quite remember this correctly, but in the record, I think it says the 7th month, but that was September because back then the calendar year started in March. So often you might see on Quaker records when people transcribe things before things, I forget what year the calendar changed. Was it 1752, I think, wasn't it? Something like that. So before that date, always be careful in Quaker records when you're looking at the 7th month, what that means, because it doesn't necessarily mean it's July. So it's just something to be aware of before that date. So Henry King, he had 6 sons and 4 daughters. His son John's burial in 1738 states he was the last but not the youngest of 6 brothers and 6 sisters. Given Henry's burial, all the children must have been born before 1680, and given the number, presumably between around 1660 and 1680. I'm going to the latest possible date because he could, of course, been having children until he died or even after he died, our Henry. But then the interesting thing about this is the marriages of 3 of the sons survive in the records of Settle, naming Henry as their father. And I'm going to show you those in a minute, because as I'm piecing this together, I'm like, I had a theory. I've now found the marriages. 3 of the sons I thought were Henry's are proved to be his through the surviving records in Settle. And we know that the records were destroyed, so it would seem that the 3 brothers still had their original marriage documentation. I'm assuming that they were issued some sort of certificate which they kept, presumably the original one that everyone signed, although I don't know, someone may have better knowledge of marriages at that time and what someone kept and how that was done. But they clearly, after the records were lost, they must have gone back, taken all their details together and recorded the old certificates and documents they had in the register. So this is what we've got here. And this is the marriage of Henry King. This is the index from Ancestry. We've got Henry King here, spouse Margaret Oberon, married in 1696. This is the full page here. You can see all the declaration and the information there about their marriage, obviously much longer than you would have in a marriage at the time in a Anglican parish register. And at the bottom, you can see all of these witnesses. I'm going to talk about those in just a minute, those witnesses, because I've said witnesses are really important as well. Don't ignore them, because they might help if you've hit a brick wall. And even if you haven't hit a brick wall, I find it really interesting to know who were the witnesses at that time. Who did these people know? Because I don't know about you, my friends are really important to me. And the records that we have through family history, we can never find out really who people's friends were at the time. We just can't do that. So if people are researching me in the future, they're not going to know who my friends were, who was important. Whereas maybe some of these people here who witnessed that were important in their life at the time. So I think it's an interesting thing to think about. So we've got this marriage here. We've got, whereas Henry King, well, Henry with an extra E in here, whereas Henry King, son of Henry King, in your county of York, aforesaid. So it's quite interesting. This is from 1696. And he was now Stainton Hall, Henry, but we've got his father's name here, proving it. And then in my notebook, I said I made loads of notes at the beginning. And one of the things I did, I'm now up to table 13, and I wrote down the witnesses at the marriage of Henry King and Margaret O'Brien in 1696. I wrote down the King witnesses or other people I knew were connected to the family: William, John, Lawrence, Thomas, Margaret, Agnes, and John. So, and again, I said about these numbers, I'm then cross-referencing all the witnesses there who signed it. I don't, witnesses might not be the right word, but and cross-reference them to all my trees, so I could cross them off and make sure I'd got things right. So that's what I did. And we can see we've got Margaret King here, still alive in 1696. And we know that she died in 1700. And so under my theory, we've got Margaret as the mother. We've got the sons William, John, Lawrence, Thomas, and Henry, of course, who's getting married. And then there's other relatives here. So we're just piecing things together. And we've got the marriage of John King here. So one of the other brothers. Again, a lot of witnesses underneath signing the whole full page here, 1695. Whereas John King, now of Stainton Hall, in the parish of, I can't quite read what that says, sorry, I can't remember. But in the county of York, son of Henry King of Meyer House, near, in the parish of Marton. So again, connecting this to our Henry in Meyer House, whose burial we saw in 1698, it's there. And some of the things that can be a bit confusing are about when they're saying of, what is the of place? But so this one's listing John King, now of Stainton Hall, and then his father's residence is still listed, even though he's not there. Again, the mother is not listed, as they often weren't, which is a shame. But we can see here that this clearly says that Henry King here is deceased. That is a long S there, deceased here. And so this again ties in to the Henry who died in 1680. So we're able to piece everything together. And he's marrying Agnes, the daughter of Thomas Rudd. So again, another record. And I'm thankful that they did reconstitute the records, because we wouldn't have this otherwise. And again, the witnesses here at their marriage, which I transcribed as part of all my planning, we've got Henry, Lawrence, Thomas. We've got Margaret and Margaret, because there's now two Margarets. I don't know which one is which, but there's the mother, assumed mother, and then there is the wife of Henry, who became a king on marriage. So this is how I'm able to then see that what my theory is correct from using a key like this. I've never had to work on anything like this before. I hope I never have to do it again, frankly. And then we've got again the other marriage. This one here is for Grace Beanland. And this is wrong. This is listing him as Lawrence Kirby. So again, check that the transcriptions on this can be wrong. It's not Lawrence Kirby, it's Lawrence King. Okay, it's King. So again, we know that these transcriptions can be wrong. And whereas Lawrence King, I don't know what that says there, but in the parish of Thornton and county of York, and he was a linen weaver. So it's quite nice. We've got a job here. We know that Lawrence was a linen weaver. We know that William was a farmer. Sometimes people did more than one thing, but I like this little bit of clue to what his life may have been like. And again, we've got son of Henry King of Meyer House in the parish of Marton here. So we've got a bit more information there. Okay. But then there's my witnesses again that I'm looking through, just to see. Right, so I'm just going to, and again, I'm pairing them all off. But now one interesting thing here that I actually only found when I was putting this together, which is a bit of a puzzle here. So this is an index from Find My Past. I'm subscribed to Ancestry, Find My Past, and various other places because they don't have all the same records. And I was just looking at this today about Lawrence King, just searching for him. And there's Lawrence King here from 1698, which is all down here, which you can see. And I was a bit confused when I looked at this today because I haven't noticed this before, but I've got the Quaker registers here. So Lawrence births here. But then in this one here, I've got a 1698 Yorkshire baptism from Martin. I was a bit confused about this. So I had a look at this when I've been preparing this PowerPoint. I don't have an answer on this, but I just think it's interesting just to look at records, and sometimes they throw up some odd problems. So if I look at this is the Quaker record. You've got the big page behind, and I've just put the big version of it in the front here so you can easily see. So Lawrence, son of John King of Marton, born the 13th day of the second month. I don't know what that says. About 8 at night, I think, 1698. There's this record here. I don't know who LB is, but anyway. So that's saying that. So this is 1698. So the 13th day of the second month, we would think it's February, but it can't be. It must be April as the second month. The 13th day of, I think that's right. Anyone can correct me on anything, but I think that's correct. The 13th day of April there in 1698. So that's from the Quaker records. Fine. Again, it wasn't a baptism. It's a birth record. But then the other one, which we go back to here. So we've looked at this one here for the Quakers. Then we've got this one here from Marton. And in Marton, this is the Deanery of Craven, the transcriptions for Marton. It's Bishop's transcripts, I believe, because under the under them you've got the Bishop's transcripts for various years. These are just the indexes here for all the different years here for Marton. And Meyer House was in Marton, as we were looking at earlier. And then from this page, we've got this rather odd one. We've got Lawrence King, baptism date, 14th of April, 1698. So we can see Lawrence King. This is the christening record, 1698. And this is the big version. Lawrence King, April the 14th. So I'm a bit bamboozled by this one that I've only found today, because this looks like his birth was recorded in the Quaker records, and then for some reason he was baptized in the church. So I don't know if anyone knows anything more about this or has come across anything like this. I'd be really interested to know what might be going on. I certainly have found in other parishes that people recorded births of people in the parish, even if they were not baptized. I have found that, but this feels a bit different. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, I'd love to know at the end, because we are coming to the end now. Now, some other things when I was emailing Ben that we were finding out about, we were trying to find some more details on William King. I mean, it amazes you. If you Google something, it's amazing what you can find, because lots of these things are just found by Googling a name. If you put the name in inverted commas, in quotation marks, you know, you'll get the exact name. So I did a lot of this. And one of the things I found was this. And this was a collection of the sufferings of people called Quakers, which is talking about what happened before the Act of Toleration. And a big list of people was made. And this was about the tithes. Now, I don't know a huge amount of tithes, but Google tells me tithes were originally a tax which required 1/10 of all agricultural produce to be paid annually to support the local church and clergy, is what I understand they are. But any comments on the end of this would be really interesting. And the Quakers made a list of all these people, and the account of tithes taken in kind from 1683 to 1690. And my understanding is that if you didn't pay them, then they came and took stuff to the value. And I think lots of Quakers suffered from that, is my understanding. But anyone at the end, I'd be happy to hear more on that. But if we look in this account from 1693 to 1690, we've got our William King of Stainton here, the father of Abigail. And then we've got Henry King of Marton. And this isn't the one that died in 1680 because he's dead by then. This is clearly the son he married in 1696. And we can see the amounts that were sort of that were taken from them. I'm not quite sure if this is over a period or in just one go. If anyone knows that, I'd be really interested to hear. But it just puts a little bit more detail in what was going on to our Quakers at the time, because they didn't have a great time all the way through. Another thing that I discovered about William King when we were looking about him is this is the autobiography here of William Stout of Lancaster. And I'll read this bit because it's quite. I'm not religious, so when I'm talking about the Quakers' belief and everything they have, obviously I don't relay it in the same way, but sometimes it just helps to tie ourselves back to thinking, look, this is what the Quakers believed. This is why they did it. This is what they wanted to do and had absolute belief in. So sometimes I think as Quaker family historians, we sometimes sort of put the God bit to one side. And reading the minutes that I did of Settle when I went up to see them in York a few years ago, you're really seeing the wording and everything that they're saying, and this is how they must have been speaking, and we'll see a bit more of that at the end. So let's read this. So this is the account of William Stout of Lancaster. He says, "But upon the first day of the week, in the evening, in the 11th month, 1685, a meeting was held at my master's house, in which one William King, a plain country farmer of Craven in Yorkshire, preached where I then attended. And the same was so much in the demonstration of the power and Holy Spirit of God to exhort all to an obedience to the light revealed in the heart and soul of our duty to God, that it irresistibly constrained me to own his testimony and submit to my conviction and obedience to the inward teaching of the Spirit and power of God in Christ Jesus, which, if obeyed, would lead me into all truth. And the said conviction was then so powerful that I resolved, through the divine assistance of the said power, to make a public profession of the principles of the people called Quaker." So it's quite fascinating that that William had this effect on someone else, and this is what people could do when they were talking to really encourage people to come and join. And religious movements and everything come from people being amazing orators and powerful to be able to get other people to want to join them and to speak things that they could connect with. And this clearly shows that the William we're looking at was one of these people, which I think is really, really interesting. Okay, so there's something else here in Piety Promoted, which was published in 1854. Piety Promoted in a collection of dying sayings of many of the people called Quakers. And I know Ben and I spoke about this at the time when I found this, and he'd seen this, and it was just making the connection between all of our families together and connecting them. And in here, we find that our William is in here, and he has some information on him from when he died. And we know now that he died in 1715. We've been able to find that out thanks to this. And this is what was said about him. And again, we're really thinking about what the Quakers believed, what they thought. And we can see he lived in lots of different places. But William King, late of Oakcliffe in Yorkshire, was a man fearing God, of a peaceable conversation, not only in the church, of which he was a faithful member, but likewise to such as were without. And he obtained a good report amongst both, and have left a sweet savour behind him. He was also a diligent attender of meetings, and advised friends to faithfulness therein. When his departure was near at hand, he, as he often had, gave good advice and counsel to his children, to keep to the truth, and to set their hearts and doors open to the friends of it, saying he had as much love to friends and truth as ever. To a friend who came to visit him, he said, "I am fitted to die." At another time, he said, "I can with the apostle say measurably, I have fought the good fight and kept the faith, and well nigh finished my course, and there is a crown laid up for me." He often declared his full satisfaction concerning his future well-being, and uttered many weighty expressions not noted. He departed this life the 17th of the 3rd month, aged 65 years. So I find that really interesting, that we, again, thinking about what he believed in the religious element of it is really quite fascinating. And we know he was 65 in 1715. So we're now getting a date of 1650 for his birth, which gives us another clue. And I ordered this. I usually do things online, but sometimes I do like to order the old printed books because they're quite cheap if you order them online. And I don't know if you ever use the website bookfinder.com, because bookfinder.com is a fantastic website if you're trying to find something cheap, because it gives you all the options for reprints and everything like that. So bookfinder.com is a great website if you've never used it. I bought this on bookfinder.com a few years ago, but well, I think it was via A-Books, but the link came through Bookfinder. So this was for the Parish Register of Skipton in Craven, published in 1894 for transcription. And when I had this, inside, we've got some kings. And this is from 1647. And here, oh, in fact, this is 1650, sorry. This is 1650. We've got William, son of Latin, Henry King of Emsall. So William, son of Henry King of Emsall, June 1750, ties in with his age of death. This is pretty sure William King. So in Skipton, baptized in Skipton in 1650. This is obviously transcription, it's not the original. And we've got a couple more in the transcription here. We've got from 1649 going backwards. We've got Henry, the son of Henry King of Emsall. So there's Henry's baptism in 1649 as well, who I'm assuming is the one we were looking at earlier, unless he died and there was a later one, but we've got them here. Oh, and this is from June. This is the same one. And there's also John from 1747, but I haven't got a screenshot of it. So we've got that in the parish registers as well. And going back to Ben's website, which is just fantastic and I love, all of these things that we were talking about and putting together, Ben's website, he's been able to put all this information on about William King. Originally, I mean, I've got a version of Ben's website from a long, long time ago about the Kings and the Bins, and there was virtually nothing about him. And we've got all these little bits of information here and some more things that have been put in to really understand, 1714, sorry. It's good to have the genealogical Bible of Ben Beck's website to make sure I'm right. I'm giving you the right information. But all of this extra information we can get from digging around from Google, from researching stuff. And we know that he married Mary Parker in 1681. The reason we know about that marriage is because it's recorded in the minutes of the settled register. It's not in the surviving registers because they weren't destroyed and it wasn't put in, but we know marriages are there. So again, you can go back to the minutes and find extra information. And we've got more information on him here. And then it goes back to where we started with the family tree, because we're nearly at a close that we started at the beginning. And we've got John Binns married Abigail King. And we're going to follow my line through to where I go from, because Joseph to David, and we actually Ben recently transcribed his will after Emma Dredger found it. So that was quite exciting for us to look at really recently. We've got to George here, who was in Sunderland and led to the founding of the Binns department store there. And we've got Frederick and Lucy Ann Stevenson. And this is an important part for my family story when we come to the Lambs, because over here, Frederick and Lucy Ann, they had a son who's my ancestor, Frederick, who married Elizabeth Roby, but they also had a daughter, Lucy Sophia, known as Soph. And it's really this connection that's so interesting when we come all the way down, because Frederick married out. He didn't marry a Quaker, so he was basically kicked out of the Quakers. But his daughter Soph married back into the Quakers. And she lived at Sidford Ferris. And it's quite interesting, really, when we come down to this and we come back to my dad's tree, and I'm going to stop screen sharing now because I'm at a close. It's interesting because my family, when Soph moved to Sidford Ferris, my family ended up visiting for generations. For generations have visited for Sidford Ferris. And when we looked at William King's words to his children. When my dad died in 2021, having researched the family, on the last day he was conscious, 3 days before he died, one of the things he said to me was, "You must go to Sibford Ferris." That's what he said to me. One of the last things he said, because he loved Sibford Ferris because of the Quaker links and all that history. And 2 weeks after he died, I did go to Sibford Ferris. Hadn't been there for years, since the 80s. And I'd messaged some Michael, who I know. And when I arrived off the bus, who were there to greet me but members of the Lamb family? And it was the most wonderful thing. And my dad's ashes will go to Sibford Ferris at some point. And so I guess I'm closing this talk with saying, we're thinking about history and is it relevant? What does it do? But what the Kings did all that time ago, and it's clear to me that the Kings were amongst the earliest Quakers, probably from the 1650s, 1660s, because none of their children in the other registers. From that decision all that time ago to the present day now, where I go to Sibford Ferris because of the Quaker link and where I want my dad's ashes to go, you think that's how lines work and how history works, bringing us all the way back then to the 1600s to the present day. And that's where my talk ends. Thank you very much for listening.